Hello and welcome to today's Slowride Guide Adventure. We have Carrie with us again today. Beautiful weather, maybe a little spotty showers on the horizon, a little more breeze than yesterday. The tide has dropped out a little more, so we're gonna hit some deeper flats. Still on the shallow grass. We're still gonna throw some top waters and explore the sand holes and the ultra shallow stuff, but it's just one of those things. We talk about the transitions and how you shift gears from day to day. Today is one of those days. We've had low pressure that had really high tides. That kind of shifted gears. We had high pressure mixed in the middle that will actually push the water out. And in future episodes, I'm gonna talk about that, but we're gonna head out here today. We're gonna take a nice little boat ride this morning. Looking forward to a great day. Thanks for tuning in. I like to start off throwing top waters. It's a great fish finder. We're gonna throw some soft plastics mixed in. Hopefully we'll get a chance to spend some time explaining the difference between the paddle tail, the rat tails, the weights, the weedless applications to that. And even though it seems very simple, it's pretty straightforward. There are a few slight modifications to the soft plastic in specific conditions. The weather today, it's pretty nice here in the beginning. We got a little more breeze today, kind of breezy for the fall. We're at that point where the weather is, we have a change coming up, and that has been a topic of discussion in the fall. You're gonna deal with changing weather patterns on short notice. We have a little slight chance of rain. Everybody bought the rain jackets today just in case, and you never know how that's gonna work out. It's just kind of spotty. Sometimes it misses us. I really like those conditions. When it's raining around me and not on my head, it's always good for the fishing. So the fish like those transitions. They react pretty well to the change in the weather. When we're uncomfortable above the water, that usually turns out pretty good for the fishing. We're gonna crank this thing up, take a little short ride, and we'll see you out there. We're getting off to a good start this morning. Had a couple of redfish throwing top waters across the shallow grass. The weather's probably gonna be an issue today. We're watching it close, looking over our shoulder as we continue fishing. We've had some blow-ups, a lot of mullet. There's a lot of life in the water. We're kicking up the mud stirs. The signs that we look for, it's not always obvious. We're hitting these shorelines, we're going along the edges, kind of following the mullet at the moment. We'll see how it works out with this. When I launch in the morning, I have this grand plan in my head of how it's gonna work out, but sometimes you shift gears real quick. You have to have a plan B and a plan C, and sometimes you go deep into the alphabet. We did manage a couple of nice reds on the first few drifts this morning, stuck with that for a while. You always want to give it a fair chance. I mean, you get that feeling that it's going to happen right there. Sometimes you get the feeling that it's not going to happen right there real quick. So we stuck with it for a while, got a couple rat reds. We're going to take a little ride, another little short ride, probably go throw some subsurface, some soft plastics, try a little bit deeper water as this weather changes. We got these ominous clouds starting to develop behind us. We might get some rain. We're just gonna stick with this and see how it plays out. If you're new to the scene, you're gonna be out here drifting around. You're gonna see a lot of interesting creatures drifting around. This morning, tons of cabbage head, jellyfish floating around, birds on the shoreline are always interesting. We had some reddish egret, white pelicans. White pelicans are always a good sign of fish. You're gonna see a lot of different birds around. Some of them will lead you to fish. And the white pelicans, they are the lions of the flat. They eat anything they want. I've actually witnessed white pelicans just decimate keeper-sized redfish. They will dive in and herd them up to the shoreline. So there is nothing too big for the white pelicans to eat. There's also white ibis cruising the shoreline. These guys are munching on little tiny bait fish, little crabs and things that edge along the shoreline. Got me a nice little speckled trout here. So we moved over to the shore, we moved over to deeper water, and we're throwing the soft plastics. This is a K-Wig ball-tail shad, Mansfield margarita, my favorite color. I catch more trout on this little lure right here than anything else in my box. Whenever I'm hitting the depths, when I'm fishing deeper grass beds, this is it. Nice little small trout, lot of little fish today. I mean, it's good action. It's enough to stay entertained, but I want that first fish back that broke me off. Now, we might go back and go a little bit deeper across this and come on back and get that. Throwing the soft plastics can be very technique oriented. Some days when they're in a feisty mood, they will just come and chase this thing down. On most days, it's very specific. What I like to do is I let it sink. You give it 2 or 3 seconds, let it make it down to the bottom. Then you give it a couple of nice vigorous pops, get a little attention, make a little noise, then you let it settle down again, kind of bump the bottom. Some days when they're really slow to bite, you got to work with them. And so it's kind of a repetitive process, but you let it sink, and then as it gets about halfway, I give it a couple more vigorous pops, make a little more noise, let it settle back down to the bottom again. And usually on the in between those vigorous pops where you're making some noise and then it settles down is when the strike happens. The fish are down on the bottom. They're prowling the grass. They're pushing through the grass like little bulldozers. They nudge shrimp, crab, other fish out of the grass, and this little rat tail worm just duplicates a fleeing bait fish. It looks like what they're hunting for. It duplicates the action of those little creatures that are getting spooked out in front of them. And nothing swims up to a big predatory fish to commit suicide. Everything runs away from them. So if you make this little worm look like it is fleeing, it's gonna get a reaction. It's just what they expect to see. It's what they see bait fish doing. It's what they see taking place down there. So when something drops in and duplicates that action, you get the reaction you want. Fish are very much tuned in to their environment. We come out here, we pursue them in the daytime where we can see what's going on. They have a whole nother world going on. They can survive, they can feed in pitch black darkness due to specialized adaptations that they have. The most specialized adaptation that the fish have at their advantage is their lateral line. Basically, it is an ear that extends the entire length of their body, and every little scale that lateral line passes over has a little sense, has little nerve endings that expose, so they can feel, they can hear, they can sense the tiniest motion moving past their body. So we throw lures, we throw topwaters that put a lot of clicking, splashing action in the water. We throw paddle tail worms that vibrate and swim, but it can also be as simple as the tiniest fly. We throw tiny little flies that don't pump a lot of vibration, they don't pump a lot of commotion in the water, and those fish can still sense that movement. So due to their lateral line, they're very tuned into their environment. They can sense the tiniest little things moving around them, and they can still hunt and feed in the complete pitch black darkness due to that lateral line. And when you look at a fish, you can actually see that line in their body. Some of them are more obvious. The snook and other things, they actually have a black line right along it. The redfish, their scales have like a pattern down their back where you can see that lateral line. On a speckled trout, it's very faint, it's not as obvious. We're fixing to make a little move. There's an old ancient road back here on the flats. It's an old terminal causeway. I got a feeling there may be some clean, clear water over there. We definitely got weather starting to brew in front of us. Most of the rain has been offshore, but it's starting to develop right over my head. So one of those things we want to be aware of. You never want to push the limits. Most importantly, be safe, live to fish another day. It is better to be on land wishing that you were out here opposed to being out here and wishing you were on land. We have these handy iPhones. It's easy to monitor the weather. There's no reason to get caught in something dangerous and put yourself and your friends at risk. Be aware of what's coming and stay safe. Even though you do have a cell phone you can call for help, you have contact with land, you still are very independent out here. Another thing that's important about this time of year is drastic changes in the weather. A frontal passage can sneak up on you in an instant. You can get caught on the wrong side of the weather. If you're planning your day and you know the wind and the weather's coming from the north, travel to the north. That way it will be behind you when you're coming in. Don't set yourself up to get caught on the wrong side of the weather. Have a plan before you leave on what happens if the weather turns bad. Have a schedule for your day. I'm gonna fish a certain amount of time in this area. I know it's coming and I'm gonna be ready to go if the time comes. One interesting aspect about Redfish Bay that some of you may or may not know is that there is an ancient road that runs across the middle of the bay. It was a causeway. Around the turn of the century, when Texas was being discovered, whenever it was being founded, sailing ships would come into the pass and dock in an area that's now known as Quarantine Shoreline. The name still exists to this day. It was called Quarantine Shoreline because the ships were quarantined out there until they could be proven to be disease-free to prevent smallpox and scarlet fever and the other diseases that ran rampant when settlers moved into Texas. So there's this old causeway and there's still remnants of it, and it still provides fishing structure on the bottom of the bay to this day. I mean, it's right over there. On a low tide, you can see it. It becomes exposed. And it's just a series of rock piles, and it's like a long sandbar that goes all the way across the bay. It was a railroad trestle bridge that went out to the shoreline on Harbor Island, and it connected to the mainland over here. It was called the Terminal Causeway. The terminal where everybody landed was right here on land. And from there, the settlers would load their stuff on a little railroad trestle bridge. They would move it to the land. And from there were trails. There were wagon trains that went through Goliad, Yoakum, Cuero, Gonzales, all of those areas right up the Guadalupe River. It's a trip down Texas history. And our area, Aransas Pass, Rockport, amazing history of all part of Texas right here in our backyard. And now that we're done with our little sightseeing trip, little birding adventure, we've seen some wildlife, a lot of little fish, but we just haven't managed to put that big fish in the boat today. So we started on the grass flats, throwing topwaters, got some rat reds, moved over behind Hog Island, drifting deeper water, throwing soft plastics. All we managed there were some dink trout. Started out with a couple quick bites. I thought we were onto something, but that faded away real quick. So came out here, made one more kind of see what happens drift. I stuck with the soft plastic. Carrie's been throwing the topwater. It's gotten really quiet on this side of the road. So we're fixing to make a move over to Ransom Flats. We're gonna wrap up the day over there. Still got our eye on the weather. We do got a brief moment right now with the sun shining. It's warming up the water, but as that rhythm of the day goes and changes, you know, we might get lucky, put some big fish in the boat. We're just gonna keep on grinding it out. It's part of the game. Took a little ride across the bridge. The plan didn't play out as I started this morning, but we did work pretty hard, shifted gears to a couple different areas. We were north of the bridge, north of the causeway, Terminal Flats, Hog Island, around in that area. Some rat reds on the shallows, some little small trout fishing deeper grass beds, kind of the normal routine that we go through while we're searching fish. We had a lot against us today. We had the wind, dramatic change in directions that moves things around. Hooked up a redfish on our last drift across the flats. Came over here to take a look at it just out of curiosity to do something a little bit different. Shifted up the plan from this morning. Shift in the weather from yesterday and the tide, so really different conditions. Yesterday was quite successful. We had some great fish, kind of quick and easy. This morning tried to duplicate that, but it don't always play out that way. As with any good fisherman, I have a lot of excuses to explain how this went. The wind changed directions. I'm looking over my shoulder at the weather. The tide changed. We had a lunar eclipse last night. I'm sure that messed up the alignment of the stars. Somebody brought this stupid banana on the boat today. That didn't help. But on the bright side, I'm gonna have a healthy snack on the way in. Glad you guys stopped by. Hope you enjoyed it. You know, and if you have a tough fishing story of your own, drop us a comment. If you like tough fishing days, hit that thumbs up button, hit the comments. Thanks for watching. We're gonna head into the marina now, and we'll see you on the next episode.